So welcome today to our tools and techniques to manage conflict in the workplace virtual boardroom that is being facilitated by HR Recruit and Vista Employer Services. My name's Jo Thompson and I'm a consultant for HR Recruit. I'm joined today by Tracy Turner and Beth Armstrong from Vista, who will introduce themselves shortly. They're going to provide you with practical tools and techniques to share with your managers and yourselves about how to manage conflict in the work environment. If you've got any burning questions during the session, then please feel free to put them into the chat box facility. But as there is a lot of content to go through, we have allowed a bit of time at the end for a Q&A session. I'm now going to hand you over to Vista, who will introduce themselves and start the session. Thank you.
Right, shall I start, Tracy?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right, lovely. Welcome everybody, and thank you so much, Jo, for inviting us to come along and do this session with you. My name is Beth Armstrong. I work for Vista as an ER trainer and as part of the Vista team. I've had a long association with Vista. I was originally a client of theirs, and then they pulled me into the wonderful world of Vista some 12 months ago. So I'll get Tracy, my wonderful colleague, to introduce herself rather than me do that. So I'll hand over to you, Tracy.
Hi everybody, my name's Tracy and I'm an employee relations trainer as well. I have been in the past an employment solicitor for many years, but became more and more interested in people, what motivates people and what makes people tick. So I moved gradually over into employee relations and training, and here I am today. Also a trained and accredited mediator, and I have a special interest and focus on workplace health and wellbeing.
Thanks, Tracy. I'm going to apologise to everybody in advance because I have got hay fever, so I've got a bit of a husky voice today, folks. I have got water very close to me, but I just wanted to explain that first to people before we kicked off into the session. So hopefully voice is going to be kind to me today. Okay, so welcome. Mine and Tracy's job is really to take the ick out of conflict, and it's something that happens in a number of different ways, in terms of whether that be within our teams, whether it be amongst wider teams, whether it's when we're interacting with stakeholders or our customers, our suppliers, other people when we're advising them in this kind of HR world. So it's the sort of thing that we want to look across the kind of whole gambit of it today around conflict and how that can arise. So by the end of, it's going to be about an hour, so by the end of this time together, we'll have offered you some tools and techniques that we use, whether that's either in conflict resolution as part of the support that we provide to our clients, or whether it's through the mediation work that Tracy does, or whether it's through the training that we try to manage these situations of conflict. So the tools and techniques, that they can be used in all sorts of situations. So I'll pop just a little bit more of context around us as Vista, if I may, as you may not know us as an organisation, but we do support a number of the UK's largest employers with what you might describe as this huge agenda of people challenges. So we support organisations and their HR teams. And we help them deal with any employment law or any people challenges, as I've said. And most certainly Tracy and Vicky's background is very much around the kind of core employment law. But we don't just do, as we describe, this normal lawyering. We also support with coaching, mentoring, leadership and management development, team development, personal development and employee relations. So obviously conflict arises a lot across that kind of arena, as well as also we support with investigations. So we're going to draw from all of those experiences of Vista today in the time that we've got together. And when we were putting this material together, we thought, let's just try and make sure that we pull from all of those threads of those areas and where we are interacting with conflict, okay, to give you, well, hopefully what's going to be something relatable, something that's easy to use, something that's easy to remember at the end of our time together. So we're going to do that. Okay, I'm going to start with a question, actually. I'm going to be asking it from kind of Tracy's point of view, if I may. And why is it that as human beings, we perceive a difference of opinion to be negative? What's your point of view on that, Tracy? What stands out for you on that?
I think a lot of that is down to we're a little bit afraid of how to deal with disagreements. You know, instead of kind of walking towards it, thinking, you know, we can talk about this, we can resolve this, we can find, you know, a happy compromise. We get lost in the worries about communication, about how we're going to fall out. Oh, there's going to be fallouts from this, and we're going to end up in a worse position. Whereas we in mediation say, walk towards conflict. Conflict can be good. Conflict can be positive. It means it's an airing, it's an outing of the issues that there are, and then you can start to resolve them. Far better that than going through, you know, a whole period of time in which you're not communicating, or things are festering, getting worse and worse and worse, and then all of a sudden, bam, there's a grievance, or there's a big fallout in the office. So walk towards conflict is our key message.
Okay, perfect. Tracy, if I may, because I know you're in control of the driving.
I am.
Could you put the slide on just to the next one for me, please? Okay, because actually at the real absolute heart of this is the fact that as human beings, we're social animals. We want to be part of a herd. Yeah, we want to be liked and we want to be loved. So this is the first sort of tool, if you like, that we wanted to share with you today, which is actually there's this idea that actually as social animals, we are influenced more so by our unconscious mind than we actually think we are. And there's a piece of technique that actually first evolved, I think I want to say from around the 1950s, correct me if I'm wrong there, Tracy, from a Dr. McLean. And at the time, it was positioned as being an explanation of how the human brain has actually grown from a sort of neurological point of view. Since then, science obviously has moved on. It's been overridden by more in-depth research, but still functionally, this is accepted as a theory as to how our brain operates. And it boils down to the fact that we have three distinct parts to our brain in this context. So I'm just going to help you discover a little bit more about these kind of three brains, if I may. Okay. So we have what we refer to as a reptilian brain. Some of us on the call might have heard it referred to as a gut brain. This is the first of our three-part brains that develops. It's our first responder, and it doesn't learn. Okay. And one of the things, a way of exploring this is, and this happened to me this morning, actually, as recent as this morning. If we look at what terrifies you, and I'll go first. When I went into the shower room this morning, I had the hugest spider. It was growling at me literally in the shower room this morning, and I just froze with utter fear. I don't know if there's anybody else on the call who has a similar fear as I do to that of spiders. And I was literally in that kind of full screeching and panicking kind of response, to one whenever it comes close. The husband Andy, I've got mice. I've got from Leslie, mice and spiders. So thank you for that, Leslie, for sharing that with us. You know, I'm not too keen on mice either, but I'm better with mice than I am with spiders. Okay, so I think I've got some more feedback coming in through the chat. Now, look. People say to me, stay calm. Andy, my husband, had no idea what was going on downstairs this morning when he heard me screeching. When he came upstairs, he was like, look, Beth, it's completely harmless. And I'm like, but it's not. It's growling at me and it's huge and it's going to jump at me. And he's like, it's not the size of the breeze block that you're claiming it is, Beth. I'm just not listening to him. I'm in that full reptilian gut response. And I literally did flee out of the shower room, and I ended up going into the spare bedroom shower room, and I showered in there. Yeah, it's this very kind of fleeing or the kind of fight or flight type response that goes on. Okay. Now, I know spiders have landed on me before. They've not injured me before. They've not bitten me before. They actually haven't attacked me before. Yeah, it's actually none of that. They're no threat to me. As I say, I'm just in that full reptilian brain mode going on when that happens. Okay, Tracy, what's yours? Do you like spiders?
Spiders don't bother me. Heights, not very good with heights.
Heights.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So that I have to be very careful when I'm driving to keep a cool, calm head on me and just say, look ahead, look ahead, look ahead. If there's like a rolling drop to one side, I can't go there. I just carry on looking ahead. Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Lifts. Another one for me is lifts. Yeah. So Tracy now has learnt never to get in a lift with me because I'll probably be hanging off the back of her as we're travelling upwards. Okay. So the idea here is in recognising that feeling in ourselves, when that threat comes in and seeing the common feelings it evokes, this is when we get into this area of conflict. Yeah. So Tracy, when you've just given me your example, and whatever it might be for others, just seeing that that's happening to us, the idea there is if we can start to see, hear and feel that that's being triggered in us, what does that do to our behaviours in that sense? When we're remembering that this part of our brain doesn't learn, it's not there to learn, it gives us almost no time to respond. Something just immediately triggers out of us, whether it be something it triggers out of what we say or some form of behaviour like flying off the handle, for example, and will often arise. Okay. So, and at the heart of what we're talking about here is actually the part of the brain that controls the majority of what we're doing. Yeah. Because eventually I remember it's not painful, and eventually I do then calm down. So eventually the second part of this 3-part brain triggers in, which is where the social brain starts to take over. Yeah. Now this social brain, it's responsible for our longer term memory. It looks for familiarity. It prioritizes speed over accuracy. So that's why we might overread a typo, for example, or I don't know, or Vicky, who we work for, she won't thank me for sharing this with folks on the call, but she put her keys in her fridge the other week. Yeah, it's where we're doing something daft. Okay. Now, why is this relevant to conflict? Well, because we're social animals. When we start to see that there's a difference of opinion, particularly from amongst an established herd, or like from an established relationship, therefore with a stakeholder or within the team, actually that will trigger our reptilian brain, and it's then the I'm being hunted out of the herd reptilian type response that then happens. So then it's these 2 parts of the brain operating together that can explain sometimes when we get a negative reaction just to the existence of conflict. Okay. Anything you want to add on those 2 parts of the brain so far, Tracy?
Yeah, well, also to say that it's that social part of the brain, isn't it, that makes us want to conform, wants us to be, part of the herd. And so that's when we can start to feel conflict, when we're starting to feel like other people aren't quite conforming, we're not comfortable with their behaviours or their language, but we're a little bit afraid of challenging it because, as I said so at the beginning, we're afraid of challenging our sort of societal, how we group together. So we'll be looking at a great technique to help with that in a minute.
Okay, perfect. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the other 3rd distinct part of our brain. Okay, so this is the part of the brain where we think we spend all of our time in, but we don't, and it's the good old logical brain. Okay, now what the logical brain responds to is facts. It's slower to respond, so it's the last of the party. Yeah. So eventually, we do listen to people, who say, Beth, keep still, the spider will go away. Yeah, if you just stop screeching like a banshee. I do eventually listen to that. The logical brain does then eventually kickstart in. It's the most sophisticated, the most well-developed of these 3 distinct parts of the brain. Okay, it's good at dealing with a new situation, but because of that is energy efficient. So the social brain looks to protect it by going and saying, well, this is what I've done before, and therefore this is what we'll do again. Okay, so the idea is that the techniques and tools that we'll share with you today are all designed to either appeal to the logical part of the brain or the social brain, or ideally both, so that we get those 2 to work well together and to sit on the reptilian brain. And that's
Somebody's not on.
Oh, you're thinking, God, this is boring. Oh, how do I? Sorry.
There's somebody not on mute.
I'm sorry, I haven't got the controls. Okay, I'll keep going, folks. I'll keep going. You might be able to help in a moment with the controls for that. Tracy, I don't think you've got control to be able to mute, have you?
I've got it. I'm just trying to put them.
Thank you. Thanks, Jo.
I wiggled them. It's worked. Okay, I've wiggled them.
Okay. So yes, as tools and techniques that we're going to share with you today, they're all designed to appeal as
That's
a
really loud.
logical brain or the social brain, or ideally both. That they then work together to sit on the reptilian brain, and that's what kind of happens between them. The social brain and the logical brain, they sit on either end of the reptile brain to kind of calm it down, yeah. And hopefully we'll show you how these things then work to sort of kind of help rationalize conflict when it happens, and they can help then depersonalize it, because we're reacting to the negative feelings around conflict, and it's feeling personal, and I'll explore a little bit more about that in a minute. Okay. Now also, when we get beyond the kind of emotion to the kind of hard, cold facts, which of course is then the logical brain working at its best, this then helps us try and resolve this conflict, yeah? And what we're talking about here is this all happening in milliseconds, is the ideal, because we need to try and get to the point of stopping, slowing down our reptilian brain from taking over and driving our reactions in the way that they do, okay? Now, just before we start then, any thoughts from anybody else as I've been talking about this? Anybody seeing in themselves when their reptilian brain's taken over? Anybody recognising reptilian brains they've had that might have triggered some form of work-related conflict at all? Or are they recognising it out of anybody else? Or are you, Tracy, how's your reptilian brain control been going lately?
Oh, well, I've kind of trained myself over the years to dampen it down, to try and encourage that logical brain and that social brain to come out on top, because that's when communication really flows. It's respectful, it's empathetic. But when I let my reptilian brain act first, that's it. You know, the very, shall we say, assertive language comes out. And perhaps the body language is a bit, or there's a slamming of the door as you walk out the room. And at the time, it feels great. Yes, that showed them. And then 10 minutes later, as Beth just said, you calm down, you think, why did I say that? Why did I do that? So the hope is that by using the techniques we're going to show and demonstrate, the hope is that we harness the logical and the social brain together and keep that reptilian brain banked. So yeah, that's what today is all about.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. I've found that I've gotten older, my reptilian brain comes in much quicker than when I was younger. Okay. Sometimes the reptilian brain takes a while to calm down before any logical joins in. I can definitely see a lot of this in grievance situations, says Anne-Marie. Absolutely, Anne-Marie, I absolutely identify with that.
Yeah,
I met with a reptilian brain in a disciplinary meeting once when an individual, literally the reptilian brain triggered in, and the individual climbed over the desk and literally grabbed the manager by his tie and was dragging him across the desk. And it was most definitely his reptilian brain absolutely at play there. And so Beth had to leap in with the very logical type brain and try and calm the situation down very quickly. Okay, so this is where these kind of three-part elements of the brain work together. Okay. I'm thinking now about when we're dealing with a situation also is that we can't communicate our intent as human beings. And I think one of the most common examples of this is when this good old-fashioned banter goes wrong. Okay. Yeah, Leslie's come in saying, I've got it the wrong way around. Logical is more prevalent as I've got older. Absolutely. I thought that might have been the case, Leslie. So thanks for that. Okay. So banter. So let's just imagine, and if I could ask you to just move on to the next slide for me as well, Tracy, that'd be great. So thank you. Let's imagine that I'm telling Tracy a joke. Yeah. And the reason why I'm telling Tracy the joke is that I want to be part of the herd. So I want to be liked and loved by her. Okay. Now, I'd just like to share something with you about Ruby Wax. I think most people know Ruby Wax. You know, she's a very well-known comedian. She tells a brilliant anecdote. She's also not just a comedian, but she's written a lot around mental health well-being. And she spent many of her own years managing her own mental health. And she uses the three-part theory that we've just talked about to explain also how important humour is to human beings. And what she says is, I don't understand why the Wax family survived evolution, because we're not tall enough to pick berries off anywhere particular high. We're not fast enough to catch bison. And we're certainly not tidy enough to keep the cave tidy. And then she goes on to say, but on reflection, we're funny. So actually, we're the glue of the herd, yeah? So it's a really interesting point that actually humour is really, really important. Yeah, so I think we all know when you do dignity at work, often what arises, we say, oh, you can't have fun. So you've now removed the kind of fun heart out of us. Well, we actually can, but we do know that when we do have fun, we know it can also go wrong. Okay. So there is a really interesting piece of theory about this in terms of what makes something funny to human beings, which is that it must be both unexpected and harmless for it to be funny. Okay. And the harmless, harmful dynamic is the crucial thing here. And so let's say I told Tracy that joke. My intention is nothing other than to make her laugh. That's my intent, but I'm not able to communicate my intent. All I do is cause the effect. And she feels it's not harmless to her. She might feel it's too crude. She might feel it's too blue. She might feel it's too sweary. Yeah. It certainly won't be funny as it's my joke, but you know it's not harmless to her. What your reptilian brain reaction is going to be, Tracy, well, what is it going to be? If you're not finding it funny, what's your reptilian response going to be to me?
I'll fire off right quick back at you, and it won't be nice and it won't be pleasant, because I'm not allowing my logical brain to set in, on my social connectivity brain, which tells me, you know what, that's okay. She's just telling one joke at the moment that's a bit off. We can talk about this. And the logical brain also demands evidence, demands information, but I'm going to bypass both those things and just go straight for that response back to Beth.
And Tracy's reptilian response, well, I'm going to be embarrassed initially, but Tracy's likely to get met back with probably a Beth reptilian response back.
Yeah, absolutely.
How could you
like
not?
A game of tennis, isn't it? It just goes back and forth. Neither of us will back down. Yeah.
But what we now know you're going to lead us beautifully into, Tracy, is a wonderful technique that can enable us to talk so much better to that of the logical brain.
Yeah.
In terms of sharing. What would a great response to me be then, Tracy? And you know you're going to take us there.
Here we go. So we give to you, we commend to you the yes but so technique, because the yes but so technique really helps us to really encourage the social connectivity part of our brain and the logical part of our brain. And it really helps to suppress that reptilian part of our brain. And that's why the yes, but so works. It can have universal application. It works brilliantly at work, but it can also work at home with your loved ones. It can work at school, at school and at home. And it can also work with your friends. And it can also work, you're sitting in a pub, someone said something to you that you really don't like the sound of next to you. This is a really good way of communicating and encouraging a good response, because that's what it's all about. The better the communication, the more you receive a better response, the more likely you are to be able to influence a change in behaviours. If, like Beth and I, you get caught up in this reptilian ping pong game, then it's just, it's a game of diminishing returns, and you're not going to get to that change in behaviours that we're looking for. So, yes, but so. First of all, it's the yes bit. So let's say, I don't use the reptilian response. I'm going to use yes, but so with Beth. And I say, hey, Beth, when you said that joke on the call just a minute ago, yeah, we were just having a laugh, weren't we? Beth might say. I say, yeah, but Beth, it could be that joke makes people feel a little bit uncomfortable. And Beth might come back to me and say, what, you can't even have a laugh at work anymore? What's the matter with people? Where's people's sense of humour? And I would respond with the yes bit. So I'm showing empathy. I'm acknowledging Beth's emotions. I'm saying, Beth, totally understand. You never intended to cause offence. That'd be the last thing you'd want to do. Oh, and please carry on with the jokes. We have a good laugh at work, and it really helps to, move a dull old day along. However, I'm letting you know, and then I move on to but is the really important bit. But is demonstrating to Beth the impact of what she's saying could have on other people. Impact is a really powerful understanding impact of your own behaviours and language is a real powerful motivator to want you to change. So I say, but Beth, I'm worried if, for example, you went on to use that joke when you're delivering training, I'm worried that you could cause some, some serious offence there to some of our delegates. And I really wouldn't want that to get to the point where a client raises a complaint. So you're giving the but, you're trying to demonstrate the impact on that behaviour, but you don't leave it there. You move on to so Beth, if I were you, I really wouldn't say that joke again. You've got a fantastic sense of humour. Remember those, those situational jokes that you tell us about. I would use them, but I really would encourage you not to use that other joke that you were saying today. So in the you've got a future focus, and we mediators love a future focus. So you're looking forwards and you're thinking, okay, first of all, you're demonstrating what good looks like. And you're also absolutely kind of underpinning what the behaviours that are not wanted anymore, that have to stop. So yes, but so use it in that sequence. I promise you, I guarantee you, it can work beautifully. But the important thing is for us to be able to be really good at the yes bit, we watch out for our triggers. Maybe we're slightly feeling the back of our necks rise a little bit. We're feeling can feel our palpitation. We can feel our heart beating a little bit faster at what that person's just said. Cool it yourself. Get into that yes mode. Empathy isn't sympathy. Empathy isn't saying, what a jolly laugh. Empathy is saying, I acknowledge your emotions. Now let's talk. So we give to you, yes, but so. And in our training, we do lots of practice with this when we deliver our training. But we really recommend it to you.
I suspect, Tracy, that quite a lot of people on the call are actually already recognising that they're already using this and using it well. Yes.
Intuitively, I think a lot of us do. Absolutely. Yeah. It's just a framework. We're putting it there in kind of, as a framework, and delivering it in a way that perhaps delegates could now pass on to people that aren't so intuitively using this kind of technique. So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And Leslie's just said it's, I think outside, I thought I was on mute. Leslie's just said it's important to get the tone right too, which is absolutely,
yes.
We signal so much communication wise, don't we, that's non-verbal.
Absolutely.
The tonality, the whole, our whole demeanour, physiology, all has, an impact in that respect, doesn't it? Yeah.
Your body language and your verbal language isn't sitting there all holier than thou and judgmental and pointy finger. You're not shouting it across the canteen. You've gone to a quiet, private place where you can just have a word with someone, your trusted colleague, because or a teammate, because you want that. You're setting that person up to succeed. And the yes, but so, feedback is your friend, as we constantly say in our delivery of our training. Feedback is your friend, and this is some great positive feedback, constructive feedback you can provide. Thank you very much. So going on to then the logical brain, and we're thinking here about, okay, what else can we feed our logical brain, so that we're encouraging that logical brain, because the logical brain refuses to act or talk before it's been able to digest lots of good evidence, digest lots of good information. It evaluates it in its mind, and then the brain will allow us to talk. So you can understand why it's such a good thing to encourage our logical brain. But we need to think about, okay, so what are the things that will encourage our logical brain, and as we're saying here, it loves a good formula. And we're saying that often the essentials at the heart of conflict is, I have a need or a want. You can't or you won't meet that need or want, and that leads to conflict between us. And that need or want can be really, multivarious, can't it? It could be, I need to be heard and I feel you're not listening to me. Or it could be, I need to work away from that open window. I need to work somewhere away from the window and you're not listening to me. I want to come into work on Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock because I've got caring responsibilities and you're just brushing that aside, you can think of any number of reasons that a need and a want we feel personally are not being satisfied in the workplace, aren't they? And if that continues and we feel it's not being addressed, we're not heard, it's not being resolved, that's when it leads to the conflict. So just think about that. One of the best tips, possibly the best tip of all time that I have received in my professional career, is from a colleague who said to me, Tracy, when you are concerned about the behaviours of somebody else, stop, pause judgment, and think about the reasons that are underlying those behaviours. And this formula kind of, meets that. So stop and think, what's the need or want that's not being satisfied here? And how has that need or want been voiced or, talked about or so far? So think about those background things, and it's only then you can start to understand the reasons for the conflict and what's happening. So let's have a look at needs. Needs, well, we all know Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We don't need to go into it in any massive detail this morning, I'm sure. But Maslow's hierarchy of needs, of course, talks about how it's essential to us as human beings in the workplace. We need to feel part of that team. We need to feel respected. We need to be free to be ourselves. And what we're saying is that if you are embroiled in conflict, if you are embroiled in feeling you are not being heard, you are not being listened to, that nobody cares about your wants or your needs, you are never going to be able to work your way up those layers of Maslow. Because eventually, as you do rise above those layers of Maslow, you start to feel physically safe, you feel psychologically safe, and then you can really start to work in peak flow. You can really start, you take off, you're innovating, you're engaging, you're taking part, you're a great influencer. But this helps to explain how resolving conflict is so important. And if we use sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it helps to explain why resolving conflict is so important to help us all then perform at peak flow. So, it's those top three slices of the model: the dream, the esteem, the team. None of that will come to fruition if we're embroiled in conflict. So we need to just kind of remember that. And as Ziglar said, and I referred to at the beginning, you can disagree without being disagreeable. So use yes, but, so techniques, keep that empathetic tone of language, keep that respectful tone of language, keep that I want to hear you, I want to hear what this is all about. And you can then start to unravel why there's the conflict that's starting to rev up. And you can disagree without being disagreeable. And a big focus of this webinar this morning is for people to feel confident about tackling conflict. As we've said, walk towards the conflict, don't ignore it. If you ignore it, that elephant in the room, it's not going to resolve it by itself when we get on to worse and worse issues in the workplace. And we all know on the call today where that lends us. So the needs and then wants. We're going to use this kind of example of two people that are sitting by a window to think about, okay, how would we resolve this conflict? And looking at this, it helps us to think about what we call in the mediation world positions and interests. So you come across these two people and one person says, under no circumstances can I work near that window if it is open. The other person says, under no circumstances can I continue working in this room if you continue to close that window. And they appear like these two people on screen now, absolute loggerheads. And you walk into that and you think, how am I going to resolve this? It's a very binary view there, open, shut, open, closed. How can we reach a compromise on this? So what you need to do is start to think about those two positions, those two people's positions. Positions are those publicly held views, and they often feel like they're really entrenched. So window open, window closed, that's the position. What we need to do is look underneath the positions at the interests. What are the wants of those people? How have those people come to feel those positions so dramatically, so deeply? What are the interests? Once you start to work on the interests lying underneath those position statements, that's when you really start to understand what's happening. So how can you sort it? You ask why. So again, remember me saying that best bit of advice I've ever had. Don't focus too much on those positions to begin with. Don't focus on the firmly held entrenched views. Focus on the reasons underneath. Ask some great open questions. Why is it so important to you? Tell me all about it. Why is it so important that you need this window closed? And perhaps that person then starts to explain, well, actually, I have really bad hay fever. If the window is open, the pollen just comes in, and I find even with the best medication, I'm sneezing, I'm coughing, I can't concentrate, I feel like I've got the flu. And then you start to think, now I understand why I've walked into almost a stand-up brow. Now I understand the interest, why it's so important to this person to have the window closed. So ask some great open questions to get there. And think about, is it a position or is it an interest? Oh, well, I'll come off that for now. We'll come and talk about that in a minute. So your position is something you've decided on. Your interests are what caused you to decide. And again, let's go to the person who wants the window open. Why? Tell me about this. You feel really strongly about this. Why is it that you would like the window to be open? And that person is saying, well, I can't breathe. I just feel like this is a stuffy office. The air conditioning is a bit rubbish. And I just get too warm. I can't breathe. Ah, thank you so much for explaining. Now I understand why you've got to this firmly entrenched position. So you can then start to work at resolving those issues, the interests. And perhaps, for example, the person who is feeling too stuffy, perhaps that person could have a fan near them. Perhaps the person who is worried about the window opening, perhaps we could improve the air conditioning, get the engineers around to have a look at the air conditioning so that it helps everybody. When you start to look at interests, I have never come across a mediation yet where those interests can't be unpicked, can't be examined, looked at, and some form of resolution worked at together. So think about positions, think about interests, think about underlying reasons why that person has come to that firm, very firm position. Beth, anything to add to what I've been talking about?
No, other than, of course, just the asking the why is just so crucial. To asking some really good quality questions to really, start to dig beneath that surface. So you very quickly can move away from the positions and really understand the interests that are kind of residing behind it. And when you're doing so, also, you're appealing, therefore, more to the logical and social brain and getting those to work better together, rather than just this kind of firm reptilian position in that respect. And
in our training, we talk about that great open question funnel. So don't go straight in, well, for heaven's sakes, why do you want it closed? Go nice open question at start. I've noticed that, you're really, really keen on this window staying closed. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And you can start to focus your questions in, and that gives that person, again, allows their logical brain and their social brain, they want to connect with you, they want to have a good relationship with you, allows those two things to click in while they're explaining themselves, because they feel listened to, they feel heard, and they feel you genuinely want to come to a resolution of this respectfully between the two people. So use those great open questions, use a funneling technique, and even spending 10 extra minutes on something will yield dividends in the long run. Absolutely. So we'll move on. So when we're talking about conflict, we talk about peeling back the onion layers then. So you think of an onion, when you're cooking, whichever way you cut it, there's a layers of the onion, isn't there? And you're going through those the layers of the onions before you get to the core center of that onion. And what we're saying is the outer layers of the onion are what you can see, the behaviors. But remember, you can disagree without being disagreeable. You know, there is no necessity, there is no reason why we can't practice with our people. And don't forget, us modeling in HR, great communication, great resolution models, that rubs off on people. It's contagious, I promise you. So look at the behaviors, first of all, important, and then think about, okay, what are these people's positions? Don't assume, ask the people, ask those great open questions, you know, so that you properly understand what their position is, but pretty quickly move on to their interests. So you're coming down into the middle of the onion now, and you're getting to the real core of the conflict, which is, you know, the reasons that caused you to form your decision on your firmly held position. But it's amazing, for example, in mediation or in great facilitated discussions, when you find out that actually it's a wonderful light bulb moment when these people realise actually through discussing their interests together, they've got far more in common than they ever realised. You know, they both want to be comfortable. They don't want the other person to be uncomfortable. Let's find a way of resolving this window situation. You know, we put men on the moon. We should be able to come to a position, you know, of a decent ventilation in a room without necessarily having to open a window. So that's a little bit about the conflict onion, and just remember, you need to work through the layers of conflict to get a really great understanding and encourage the social and the logical brains of people coming on. Beth, anything to add to our conflict onion?
Just to think about that, we can use the yes but so at each of the layers to get to the interests, to really get to that resolution. So to just not underestimate just how powerful yes but so can be in this kind of respect as well. So
supercharge it when you come to that so bit. Supercharge that with some questions. Add some great questions on. And there is nothing, almost nothing, that adds to the well-being and to conflict resolution than a person feeling heard. So by asking these great open questions as you're going along with this person's feeling heard, and it could be the first time that this person feels that somebody's actually properly listening to what they've got to say. Never forget that. You might be that first person that's giving them that time and your energy. And you're quiet and you're thinking, you may be the first person to be giving them that. Absolutely, it can't put a price on it. Absolutely invaluable. So over to our audience this morning. Tell us your thoughts about the yes but so. Tell us about your thoughts about conflict, and tell us about any great examples that you've used for resolving, you know, two strongly held positions. Over to you.
And any questions that anybody's got?
And any questions. So this is a really very short flip through of some great techniques and frameworks to think about. So please do, now's your time for questions.
If it's easier and you want to take yourself off mute rather than use the chat box, then that's an option as well.
I think this has been brilliant, and I work within a manufacturing. We've got 3 sites, a manufacturing plant, and reptilian brain is everywhere. To be honest, so the yes but so will be absolutely brilliant for us to train out to our supervisors to try and de-escalate some of the behaviours that may happen on our production floor. So I actually think this is absolutely brilliant. I myself am an NLP practitioner and cognitive hypnotherapist, so some of this isn't new to me, but I'd forgotten. So it's been absolutely amazing to reset myself with it and sort of go out with a positive approach that we can give to our managers and supervisors. So
yeah, it's amazing how simple yes but so is, how powerful it is. And working in a similar background to the one that you've just described, Emma, I wish I knew about yes but so a lot sooner when I was in that type of environment. And as I say, it's the one technique that seems to resonate the most when I was working with a group of managers, supervisors within manufacturing last week, and they were just like, oh my goodness, Beth, this just sounds so simple. But actually now understanding that these distinct 3 parts of the brain and how that's working, and just how such a simple technique can be really appealing into that of the social and logical brain. And there was a guy who gave me feedback to say, I can see and hear and feel a situation that had arisen last week, that if I'd have just used the yes but so, it would have taken me to my logical brain and heart brain quicker, which meant I would have diffused the situation with the person better, and then could have gone on to use the yes but so with respect to their behaviour. So it's just don't underestimate the kind of simplicity of it, but the kind of power of it. I think we might have a question in this chat, just leapt up, Tracy, that I think I've just missed from Estelle. Same question for me. What if a reptilian reaction of one of the parties is not to engage in the conversation or mediation at all? And I've got not an example, but any tips on when someone will refuse to engage in a conversation?
Go on, Beth, sorry, you carry on.
I would say that it's about the questioning, because you're being met with a kind of position. My position is I do not want to engage in the conversation. So the kind of the powering up and the use of really good powered up questions to get beneath that, to understand the interests of why you're deciding you don't want to engage in it, is key. But Tracy, I think you were going to add something else there as well.
Sorry, no, Beth, that's absolutely brilliant. I completely agree with all of that. And I would say go into it with a positive mindset. If you go in thinking, oh, this is insolvable, or what am I doing here? This is a waste of my time. That's going to come through in your body language and the language that you're using. Use really positive language. I'm thrilled that Emma is an NLP practitioner. Emma could give us a masterclass in the use of positive language. It's all about the use of positive language, and it's all about helping people. As you're their sounding board, use a coaching approach, use those great questions, and help that person to think, okay, what's the alternative? So are we just going to stay here then? And do we think, the situation as it is going to stay like this? Or do we think it has the potential to get a lot worse? So it's all those great positions, think about positions, think about interests, think about the future. What does the future like? Has anyone seen Staged with David Tennant and Michael Sheen? Yeah, well, they use, and it made me howl with laughter, but they did use a phrase, and it is used with real comedic intent, I promise you. But they used a phrase which was, is there a world in which, we wouldn't have this fallout? And it is very comedic. But you are kind of trying to help people see, is there a world in which, we're not at loggerheads here, and it's helping people to understand we can't stay here. We can't stay here, and there is a different world that we could be living in. This is capable of resolution, but you've got to go in with that positive mindset and that great positive language.
And we've got another question that's come in as well, Tracy.
Great.
People have a freeze response sometimes too, which is hard to get through. Any advice when met with that?
Give people time. And as Beth said, and also I think, whether or not the learning styles is still a really good way to look at people or not, I think it's still a good thermometer to think about. That person might be a reflector. You may have just said something to them that's really stumped them, and they're thinking, I need to think about this. I need to take this away and think about it. It could be a reflector. So let that person have the time to think about things. Others of us will just blurt an answer back and away we go. But some people need to stop, think, reflect. So give people a bit of time. It's not that they're necessarily freezing you out or that they're being difficult. They just need time to think. So give them that.
I've had another question come in as well, Tracy. There's a situation where I work with a new manager who has had feedback from the team stakeholders who find the manager comes across very negative and not communicating well. Where would you start to get this shift? We have another fantastic technique, haven't we, which I think helps in conflict, which we haven't covered on this call, and it's how to give feedback, and it's a WIF framework. which again, if we deliver feedback in the WIF framework, then we again are appealing more to the social and logical brains.
Yeah.
And what WIF stands for is the what happened, so already taking it to logical, factual. The I in WIF is impact, effect. So this is the impact and effect of what's happened has had. And the double F in WIF is future focus. So this is how we'd like it to be different. So I think you may be able to help these individuals who are on the receiving end of this type of behaviour in terms of coaching them in the use of WIF, for them to give that feedback to that manager, or the stakeholders to give the feedback directly to the manager. Because it's better the real-time feedback and those who are on the receiving end giving the feedback more directly. So you should be able to find WIF actually on our resources on our website. So go and have a little dig in the resources there, or just drop us a separate message through LinkedIn, because that can help.
Yeah, absolutely. And that manager, you don't know what culture that manager has come from. Beth and I have the privilege of delivering training for a company that's quite new, 2-3 years old, and is determined to start as they mean to go on with their values, with their vibrance, with their energy. And new people are coming into that who have only fairly recently worked in other organisations. They're going, wow, this is fantastic. I can't believe this is how you deal with things, with grievances, with disciplinaries, with informal, it's all about the talking, the understanding, and it's like a breath of fresh air to them. This manager may not have worked in the culture that you are trying to build and create. So it's about a little bit of TLC, I think, with that manager, a little bit of coaching, helping that manager to understand your organisation's values and how you do things. And again, asking those great questions, and using the yes, but so, or with, kind of saying, look, here's the evidence that we've got coming in. In all other aspects, in many other aspects, you're doing a fantastic job. No one's ever all good. No one's ever all bad. However, we really want to support you in kind of embracing and adopting our culture. So how can we help you do that? And then I would say, some coaching sessions or mentoring sessions, or sometimes, a manager has only been used to a different type of culture before, more of a negative command and control. Command and control does not work in 2023. I've worked in many different sectors. It does not work. So maybe it's a bit of, supporting that manager and helping him or her to embrace your culture and how you get things done. I hope that's helpful.
I've got another one that's come in as well. People don't always want to share their personal reasons based on their own experiences in the workplace. How do we get to understand the why if they're not willing to share their own personal experiences and feelings?
Yeah, again, I think it's helping that person to gain trust in you and the process, and helping that person to understand that you're not asking these questions to be nosy or inquisitive or an interrogation. It's what you're just trying to understand where they're coming from in response to this particular issue. And it would be really helpful if you could understand a little bit more about it, because that might help you to kind of dislodge some of the hard sand and break some of that hard sand away, so that, you start to see some blue skies. So I think it's just working very gently with that person, but with positive language, a positive mindset, listening, asking great questions, and making sure that, you're being absolutely clear. You're not prying. It's all about, in relation to this particular event, tell us a little bit more about why this is so important to you, because that's important to us.
Perhaps also just to honestly acknowledge it, and test out your feedback, to say something like, I'm detecting an unwillingness on your part to want to share. Help me understand that more. Help me understand what's going on for you. So it's back to those very powered up, open-based type questions again, to try and open that dialogue up.
Very much.
So we've got another one. Thank you for responding. So yes, somebody asked me what the I stood for in WIF, so I've just dropped that into the chat for you. So it's impact. Okay.
Yeah. Impact. I'll say again, impact is one of the most powerful things that we can provide to people that's really motivational, that wants to help them, that wants to change behaviours. It's really powerful. So not in a, don't talk about impact in a judgmental, you know, in a finger waggy point of view, just saying, look, you know, I'm worried that if you continue with that language or behaviour, this is going to happen. So, you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, an inquisition or interrogation or, you know, judge and jury. It's not about that. It's about helping that person see the world from a different angle. You know, that saying, oh, who were the gifted ears to see ourselves as others see us? It's us trying to help that person understand actually, you know, how their behaviours are coming across to other people.
I can't see any more questions in the chat at all. So I know you wanted to do a close off, didn't you, Jo? So
Yes, no problem. Thank you. Okay, so thanks very much to Vista and everybody that's joined the session. I'm sure you'll agree that it's been absolutely fascinating. Lots of interesting topics that we've covered there. I will be sending out some communication later on today, and there will be some contact details for Vista about how to get in contact with them and some of the resources that they've just mentioned. So I'll be sending out correspondence to everyone that's signed up. I'll be putting a post on LinkedIn. So if you would like a copy of the handout from Vista or the slides, then please put a comment against the LinkedIn post. We've got another event this week, which is on Thursday at 12:30, and it's called Leading Change Virtual Boardroom. A link to sign up for that event will be included in the email. We'll also be sending out a feedback survey to everyone that's signed up. So if you've got a couple of minutes to spare to complete it, then we would really appreciate it. If anyone's recruiting, we've also got accountancy recruit, FD recruit and executive recruit within the group. But otherwise, I'd just like to say a massive thank you to Vista for the time and effort into putting the session together. And also thanks very much to everyone for joining us. I'm sure you'll agree that it's been a really good session. So thanks very much.